Hey everyone, welcome to Logan's Mosh Pit. Glad to have you here. Do me a favor and please subscribe if you haven't already. I just got back from a fishing trip. I went with my dad. We each caught 2 fish. That's what it's all about. Also got my line stuck on the power lines, because I'm an expert fisherman. Anyway, it's time for another episode of Rock and Read. Today we'll be reading chapter 13 of Janis, Her Life and Music. Luckiest chapter in here. I decided to split chapter 13 in half because this chapter is longer than Betty White's career. If I read the whole chapter, I'm sure this video would be over an hour. I don't want that to happen. So let's get going with chapter 13. Chapter 13 is called Haight-Ashbury's First Pinup. We got a quote from Janis at the top, which says, "The best of all was Monterey. Ain't nothing like that ever gonna happen again." Here we go. The months between the fall of 1966 and Janis's transformative performance at the Monterey Pop Festival in June 1967, after which she became a national star, were the happiest of her life. "I'm becoming quite a celebrity among the hippies and everyone who goes to the dances," Janis wrote the Joplins in late '66. One of a burst of letters she sent chronicling her achievements and pleasures. As she evolved from being one of the boys in Big Brother to becoming the group's central focus, the correspondence made clear her personal ambition. Of course, her carefully composed missives accentuated the positives, leaving out her renewed drug usage and increased drinking. While reporting on the band's growing popularity, though, Janis dropped hints about her own changing identity, one that would ultimately separate her from the band and her family. By the end of 1966, Haight-Ashbury was attracting nationwide media attention, with a focus on the rising rock bands, as well as the expanding counterculture reflected by the increasing numbers of young people making the scene. Venues proliferated, and the Avalon and Fillmore began booking more diverse acts, including the R&B star Otis Redding. The epicenter of a new kind of spiritual consciousness, San Francisco was attracting devotees of Eastern religions and philosophies, and in the spirit of the Diggers, Big Brother played benefit after benefit, greatest for all of them, from the Buddhist and the Hare Krishnas to the Haight-Ashbury Free Clinic and the Hells Angels. The band became particularly chummy with the San Francisco chapter of the Angels, a major component of Ashbury. Enamored of the motorcycle gang's outlaw image, Janis actually felt more kinship with bikers than with practitioners of Eastern mysticism, declaring to her parents the Big Brother's gig at an Angels party was her crowning achievement heretofore. This seesaw between peace and love endeavors and the decidedly macho outsider Angels was oddly common. Few sensed that the two subcamps of the Haight scene would eventually clash with deadly results. The same weekend, the Big Brother played a Zenefit, benefiting the San Francisco Zen Center. It had headlined a November 12th Angels event at Sokol Hall. Organized by Angel Chocolate George Hendricks, a lover of vodka spiked chocolate milk, it was a complete madhouse, Janis wrote the Joplins. "You thought you were going to a hippie party," recalled Buddhist poet Larry Litt, then 19, "but you had to go through this gauntlet of angels at the door. I was with the girl wearing a fishnet t-shirt with nothing underneath, and the angels liked that, so we got in." The angels milled about the lobby, flowing in and out all night, never dancing but drug dealing and beer drinking, said Litt. David Getz discovered that his drum heads, left unattended, had been stamped with the slogan, "When we do something right, no one remembers. When we do something wrong, no one lets us forget." During the middle of Big Brother's set, a large man shuffled on stage, grabbed the mic from Peter Albin, and screamed maniacally before wandering off. Janis's shriek seemed subdued in comparison. When the bassist asked a nearby angel, "Who was that?" he said, "Oh, that's our friend Gary, the deaf mute." There was a lot of drinking and rowdy partying, Getz recounted. "I remember being a little scared, but I felt protected by the angels. Free Will and Frank and Chocolate George were poetic characters into the romance of the road. At night's end, the bikers roared off simultaneously, making this huge noise like a jet plane." Befriended by beat writer Michael McClure, Free Will and Frank Reynolds made art, wrote verse, and penned a memoir, co-written with McClure and published by Grove Press. Before long, Janis was perched behind Free Will and Frank on his bike. She'd take him and other angels to bed, but overall, they treated her as their little sister, lead singer of their very own house band, acknowledged by the Angels' insignia being emblazoned on Big Brother's Cheap Thrills album cover. Janis would remain close to the Angels for nearly 4 years, even after their violent rampage at the 1969 Altamont Festival resulted in their being cut off by previously friendly bands. Though Big Brother's mainstream single had flopped, Bob Shad booked the band for a December 1966 recording session in Los Angeles. To feature me, Janis wrote the Joplins, so we're working on my stuff. Even the revered jazz critic Ralph Gleason noticed Janis, mentioning her for the first time in his San Francisco Chronicle album, On the Town. Heard a bit of Big Brother at the Avalon a while back, and they're really getting into shape. Janis Joplin is a remarkable singer with a wild, strong voice. Though Janis had become the focal point on stage, Peter Albin still assumed leadership duties for the band, negotiating contracts and handling press interviews. He was prominently quoted in a December 19 Newsweek story on the San Francisco scene, The Nitty-Gritty Sound, in which he said, "People are getting into the nitty-gritty of emotional and personal life. They're expressing themselves through physical movement, and this creates a real bond between the musicians and the audience." Janis was paying attention. Within a year, she would assume Albin's role, becoming a master of the soundbite and a sought-after interviewee. After Chet Helms' dismissal, Big Brother looked for a new manager, and briefly hired a local named Jim Killarney, who left after being injured in a car accident. The band was all disorganized. Janis wrote the Joplins. They performed constantly, but most gigs were either benefits or low-paying, so money was tight. They had to rent cars and drive themselves to shows in Sacramento and Santa Cruz and sleep on floors because they couldn't afford motels. Much of Janis's meager earnings went into car repairs, visits to the dermatologist who prescribed tetracycline for her acne, and food for her new love, a puppy named George. "So cute, only 8 weeks old and fluffy as a dandelion," she reported home, part German Shepherd and part English Shepherd. "He's going to be pretty big." Also, while in Santa Cruz this weekend, I caught a mouse, really cute. I haven't named him yet. George became Janis's constant companion, with the two often photographed together. Seth Joplin routinely sent his daughter money, since she often complained, sometimes humorously, about financial problems. "My car suffered a tragic breakdown on the streets of Berkeley and is now parked in the alley behind the repair shop, waiting for me to raise $75. Should have it as soon as we get paid for the Stanford job. But as my finances are tenuous, I think I'll keep Daddy's $20 check to be sure I can get to L.A. After that, I'll destroy it." After memorizing the contents, of course. Confessing that she would have to miss the upcoming holidays in Port Arthur, Janis tried to soften the blow by focusing on what to buy her family for Christmas, and requesting for herself a good all-round Betty Crocker or Better Homes cookbook and some colorful tights like she had worn in high school. The mainstream recording session, over 2 days in mid-December, found Big Brother in a Los Angeles studio much like the one in Chicago, saddled again with a staff completely inexperienced at working with loud freak rock. Veteran engineer Jackie Mills, who had recorded Fred Astaire and numerous film scores, was impressed by Janis, however. "She had such a great quality," he recalled. "When she sang, you could hear the freedom." On a tight budget, there was no time for pre-production or redoing songs or fixing botched notes. The group had to cut its material quickly in 1 or 2 takes, with minimal soloing and no songs running longer than 2.5 minutes. Over some 12 hours in the studio, Big Brother recorded Jim Gurley's loping, countryish Easy Rider and surreal take on Cuckoo, Peter Albin's soaring Light is Faster Than Sound, and childlike Caterpillar, and Janis's ominous Intruder, bluesy Women as Losers, and Herky Jerky The Last Time. Before releasing an album, though, Shad insisted on issuing a single in early 1967, pairing the Chicago recordings prominently featuring Janis's vocals. Call on Me with Sam Andrew and Down on Me. While in L.A., Big Brother played the Shrine Auditorium, after which Janis spent the night with her aunt, Barbara Irwin, their first rendezvous since 1961. In a letter sent before her arrival, Janis tipped off her aunt that, "I'm a new breed swinger now, the idol of my generation, a rock and roll singer," and invited her and the family to the Shrine dance. Barbara insisted Janis wear a bra during their visit, but the reunion was otherwise joyful. They even played a round of golf. As proof, Janis mailed her mother a scorecard from Barbara and my golf match, commenting that her cousin Donna reminds me very much of Mimi, just like her, same mannerisms, everything. Though swiftly becoming the queen of the counterculture, Janis still craved her parents' love, even as her fan base grew, perhaps even more so. Her letters at the time read not only as a chronicle of her rising fame, but also as a testament of her need to be tethered to her family. It was a need that neither Janis nor the Joplins consciously realized. Big Brother rushed back to San Francisco to attend a run of eagerly anticipated concerts at the Fillmore, where Janis had been forgiven by Bill Graham. The promoter had booked Otis Redding, and after flying to Georgia to convince him to play for the hippie clientele for 3 nights in late December. Before Graham took it over, the Fillmore Auditorium primarily presented black artists, and Redding had performed there in 1965 on a bill with B.B. King. For his December shows, Graham commissioned 2 posters, one catering to the African American community and another for his usual crowd, with a typically psychedelic design, prominently listing opening acts The Grateful Dead and Country Joe and the Fish. Already a Redding fan, Janis became an Otis devotee after seeing the 25-year-old Stax/Fold recording artist and his 8-piece band all 3 nights. In addition to possessing a legendarily soulful voice, Redding masterfully worked the crowd with a sensual yet down-home style. "Wanna jump some more?" he'd holler after an up-tempo number. "Wanna get sweaty some more?" His balladry affected Janis the most. Pain in My Heart, where he massaged the words, using a subtle force to differentiate each verse, with occasional uncontrollable shouts of emotion. According to Country Joe McDonald, who would soon become her lover, Janis told me she invented her baby stuttering vocals after seeing him. Redding's latest single, Try a Little Tenderness, a gut-wrenching version of the pop standard covered by Bing Crosby and Frank Sinatra, was, according to Redding biographer Jonathan Gold, the most harmonically complex song that Otis would ever record, chock full of minor 2nd and 6th chords. The track is a musical micronism of the Stax sound, a seamless synthesis of the pleading ballads and pounding grooves. Janis watched, listened, and learned. She wanted to be Otis, McDonald remarked later. To get a front and center seat, Janis arrived long before each 9 o'clock show. One of the nights, she was tripping on acid after being dosed at a party, according to Dave Getz. But that didn't distract her total focus on Redding. Bill Graham later described one moment during the set, possibly while Redding sang I've Been Loving You Too Long, when the singer spotted a gorgeous young black lady in a low-cut dress who started sighing like she could just not hold on. He walked across the stage, leaned down and looked at her, and he was a big, good-looking guy, and she was going, "Oh, oh," and he said, "I'm gonna sock it to you, baby." 1, 2, and the whole place went, "Ha!" all together. Janis took note. In his Chronicle column, Ralph Gleason described the Redding vocal style as heavily emotional, overtly sexual singing that makes his slow ballads almost orgastic in performance, oozing sex and swinging like mad. Surely Janis read the review. Dusty Street was a regular at the Fillmore, then a college student and soon to become a pioneering FM radio DJ. It was more fascinating for me almost to watch Janis watching Otis, she recalled, because you could tell that she wasn't just listening to him, she was studying something. There was some kind of an educational thing going on there. I was jumping around like the little hippie girl I was, thinking, this is so great. And it just stopped me in my tracks, because all of a sudden Janis drew you very deeply into what the performance was all about. Watching her watch Otis Redding was an education in and of itself. From that week until the end of her life, Janis invoked Redding as her favorite singer. You can't get away from him. He pounds on you. You can't help but feel him, she would tell Nat Hentoff. She'd feign a swoon while citing Redding before TV cameras. Her own erotically charged delivery would leave our audience aroused. Some of Janis's male counterparts, such as Led Zeppelin's Robert Plant, then a teenager trolling in blues bands in rural England, would later emulate Janis the way she did Otis. Before their Lagunte's lease expired and band members moved into separate San Francisco apartments, Big Brother threw a massive Christmas party. They bought cases of wine, cooked pots of food, and rolled 100 joints of the marijuana they'd picked in Nebraska. The weed turned out to be only hemp, so not a single person got high from it, but plenty of acid circulated. Janis drew Christmas cards for her housemates. That's how Getz discovered her artistic talent, he said later, and the band decorated a Christmas tree, around which members of Moby Grape, The Airplane, The Dead, and Quicksilver played music and partied. Other guests included assorted Hells Angels, Chet Helms, Travis Rivers, and former Waller Creek boy Pal St. John, who had recently moved to San Francisco from Mexico. Someone brought a pet goat, which ate half of Getz's bedspread, and the Christmas tree toppled over more than once. December ended with a blur of tri-nightly gigs and benefits for various causes, during which there remained a communal feeling of taking responsibility for ourselves and solving problems on our own, Sam Andrew explained. The year 1967, one of the most eventful in rock, began with another Hells Angel party, this time a throng-free gathering in Golden Gate Park's Panhandle. A harbinger of what was to come, the New Year's Whale, WHALE on some handbills, was paid for and promoted by the Angels as a token of gratitude to the Diggers, who had bailed out bikers Chocolate George and Harry Henry after an October arrest. The Angels pay their debts, Digger Peter Coyote recounted. They asked us to arrange the details, but they footed the tab, including free beer, and offered the Grateful Dead, Janis Joplin, and Big Brother and the holding company as a huge thank you to the community. It was the first large-scale free rock concert in any city park, and it was a grand day. Writer Charles Perry remembered a mind-boggling sight: the feared outlaws drinking and dancing with hundreds of mystical acid heads in a foggy San Francisco park. The Angels now resided in a house across the street from the Grateful Dead's home on Ashbury Street. Played a hippie party in Golden Gate Park yesterday, Janis wrote the Joplins on January 2nd, 1967, co-sponsored by the Hells Angels, who, at least in SF, are really very nice. They have a different social code, but it seems to be interdirected, and they don't try to impose it on anyone. She also thanked her family for their Christmas gifts, including the requested cookbook, a candlestick, my favorite, just lovely, and another $20 from her father. She apologized for not calling home on Christmas. People started coming for the party at 2 in the afternoon, and I just couldn't. Looking forward to what she projected would be a successful new year, she told her parents about a recent photo session with photographer Lisa Wall, who did a whole bunch of things of me, and I think they're going to use one on a poster for the family dog. God, I'm so excited. Also, Stanley Mouse, who has a bud machine, has made Janis Joplin buttons. Oh, thrill of thrills, very rare. Only the in people have them, my dear. No name, just a picture. So you have to be in the know to know who I am. But I dig it. Fame, fame. It was a goal she could declare to her family, but kept under wraps among her hippie friends. Big Brother was one of the bands invited by editors of the underground paper The Oracle to perform on Saturday, January 14th, in Golden Gate Park at a gathering of the tribes for a human be in. Word spread through posters and Oracle ads that all SF rock groups would be appearing, alongside Beat Poets, LSD, Acolytes, and Campus Radicals. But Big Brother was already booked elsewhere and missed the event of the year. The Dead, the Airplane, and Quicksilver played for an unpredictably huge crowd of 40,000, who frolicked peacefully on the polo fields that afternoon. Covered widely by the media, sounded a clarion call for would-be hippies, freaks, and heads to flock to the height, kicking off the soon-to-be-named Summer of Love. Big Brother was down in Los Angeles performing at the Shrine with, ironically, the group whose acid test gave birth to the Be-In, Ken Kesey's Merry Pranksters. The new year brought Big Brother what it needed most: a manager. Julius Carpin, a friend of Quicksilver manager Ron Polt, both hailing from Chicago, had returned to San Francisco after traveling in Mexico with Kesey. The former business agent for the San Francisco chapter of the very powerful American Federation of Labor and Congress of Industrial Organizations, better known as the AFL/CIO, had checked out Big Brother during the mid-January run at the Matrix. Carpin reorganized Janis, celebrating her 24th birthday on stage, as a girl he'd seen at a North Beach party in 1964, singing stunning country western that blew everyone's minds. He also fell in love with Big Brother's sound. They were so powerful, and the Matrix was so small, he recounted, realizing in a flash the band would be the biggest thing happening in rock and roll. After meeting with Carpin, Big Brother, impressed by his credentials as a former Merry Prankster, hired him. Got ourselves a manager who is so fine, Janis optimistically wrote the Joplins, does everything and really knows his business. Really helped a lot. Bought a 52 Cadillac hearse for transporting band and equipment, and looking for new places to live in the city. We move out of here on the 15th. Our new record is coming out soon, and best of all, we're really getting better. New material and new proficiency, it has us all turned on. We have a lot of confidence in our ability now, and we're irrepressible. Well, we're awfully excited anyway. One of the first problems Carpin had to solve was the stack of unpaid parking and traffic tickets that Janis had accrued. She refused to pay the hundreds of dollars she owed, and instead preferred to spend the night in jail. The more we argued over it, the more stubborn she got, recalled Carpin, who opposed her choice. We can pay the fines, he told her, but she said, no, I'm not giving them any money. When Carpin said, you're tough, he recalled that she answered, I don't just sing this way, you know. Janis's stance echoed that of her outlaw friends in the Diggers and Hell's Angels, but Carpin paid the fines anyway. Janis's next letter home touched on other developments. So far, moving into the city has really hung us up. We have no rehearsal hall. Very hard to find a place where you can make a lot of noise. Don't have to pay much rent, and the equipment will be safe overnight. So, we're all sitting in our respective places trying to find something to do and waiting. And it's come at a very inopportune time. We were really getting into a good thing together. We're getting lots better, and it's so frustrating. No doubt some of Janis's frustration was due to enforced distance from her drug buddies. Separation, serendipitous it turned out, from Nancy Gurley and speed freak Rita, resulted in Janis weaning herself off speed. While looking for an apartment, she crashed with a friend who lived on Hyde Street, across from the Mystica Boutique, where she frequently stopped to chat with Peggy Crescetta. I sit around and play folk songs on my guitar, and watch television, and make beats, and take George for walks. She wrote her parents, George! Now he is my salvation. He gets me out of the house when I have just sat and moped, and he's so nice to come home to after a job when I'm feeling especially lonely. I come home and he's so happy to see me. Just can't contain himself. He's so sweet. Any dog owner will tell you that. He's getting bigger and bigger, but is really a good dog. When I take him in the car, he won't get out unless I tell him to. Never runs away, and his house broke. And so sweet. All he wants is to be petted and loved. That's about all anybody wants, though, isn't it? An animal lover since childhood, Janis would adopt a succession of dogs and cats. But unlike George, her need to be petted and loved would seemingly never be satisfied. Janis had enjoyed countless flings over the past 6 months with infatuated fans, Hell's Angels, and fellow musicians, but she longed for, in hippie parlance, an old man. Then, in Berkeley one February weekend, Big Brother played the Golden Sheep Bakery with Country Joe and the Fish. I was on acid that night, and I just fell in love with Janis, Country Joe McDonald recounted. She was so cool. We were clowning around and dancing, and at one point all the bands jammed together. A year her senior, McDonald had become a folk singer at 20 after 3 years in the Navy. He moved from Los Angeles to Berkeley, participated as an activist in the free speech movement, and joined the SDS, Students for a Democratic Society. Forming Country Joe and the Fish with Barry the Fish Melton in 1965, they played politicized folk music, electrified with psychedelic sonics and a frenetic rhythm section. Janis dug the handsome McDonald's magnetic stage presence, intelligence, and bravado. He had just divorced his wife of 5 years when he and Janis became a couple, soon after the bands played a benefit together on March 5th. Things happened fast, McDonald told filmmaker Bob Sarles. We just fell in love and started hanging out, and I wound up living with her in the Height. A Berkeley resident with no car, McDonald often hitchhiked across the bridge to San Francisco. Almost giddy, Janis wrote the Joplins, I have a boyfriend, really nice. He's head of Country Joe and the Fish, a band from Berkeley, named Joe McDonald. He's a Capricorn like me, and is 25, and so far we're getting along fine. Everyone in the rock scene just thinks it's the cutest thing they've ever seen. It is rather cute, actually. Janis pasted a photo of her and McDonald looking very much alike in her newly put-together scrapbook, labeling it Country Brother and the Company Fish. Mainstream at last released Big Brother's second single, the soulful Call on Me, Janis's duet with Sam Andrew, with the B-side, the fiery Down on Me, featuring her soaring vocals, double-tracked on both songs. Janis's voice and the tune's straightforward melodies made the single more accessible than the previous record, though still not representative of the band's noisy live sound with extended guitar breaks. Big Brother was again disappointed by the recording's clean pop sound, and they now seriously regretted having signed a 5-year contract with a low-budget label that had no traction in the marketplace and no particular interest in their musical vision. Our new record is out, Janis wrote her parents. We seem to be pretty dissatisfied with it. I think we're going to try and get out of the record contract if we can. We don't feel that they know how to promote or engineer a record, and every time we recorded for them, they got all our songs, which means we can't do them for another record company. But then if our new record does something, we'd change our mind. But somehow, I don't think it's going to, but we'll see. More importantly, I feel we're playing better than ever. Seems to have more of an idea of working together, not fighting each other with our instruments. When Big Brother met with an attorney to see if they could break their mainstream contract, he was fairly negative about it, Janis reported, feeling used and abused by the label, which was incommunicado. According to Janis, the band tried to contract Shad, but to no avail. The lack of support leaving the band feeling hung up. Mainstream did send the 45 to AM radio stations, the primary means of breaking hit singles, but in San Francisco a tiny FM station was beginning to get attention by drawing Hyde-Ashbury listeners away from the AM dial. KMPX 106.9 was a foreign language station when DJ and music entrepreneur Tom Donahue began broadcasting there 4 hours a day, spinning San Francisco bands and other artists who didn't get AM airplay. And rather than stick to the AM format of rapidly paced brief singles interspersed with commercials, he kept the needle on vinyl for album tracks stretching upwards of 15 minutes. In his deep baritone, Donahue also informed audiences about Hyde happenings, anti-war protests, and concerts. He was soon joined by Detroit native Larry Miller, who spun discs from midnight to 6 and also rapped to his listeners, more like a fellow head than a commercial DJ. As their audiences increased, Hyde businesses began advertising during Donahue's and Miller's programming. Janis had a room in a flat above the Hyde, McDonald recounted, and that's where we spent a lot of time. And I remember us listening to KMPX radio, a tiny little station then. Tom Donahue and Larry Miller would be the DJs, and we were lying in bed listening to the radio to hear our songs, because Big Brother had a single and we had an EP, and they would play a Big Brother track and we would go, wow, wow, this is so cool. And then they played Country Joe and the Fish and was like, wow, this is too much. The B-side, Down on Me, got the most loyal airplay, eventually reaching number 39 in San Francisco. Back in Texas, the Houston Post reviewed the single, noting, "The girl's voice knocked me out. Little did I know that it is Janis Joplin, a girl who used to sing here at the Jester and Sand Mountain." San Francisco's mainstream press was now noticing Big Brother, including music critic Phil Elwood of the San Francisco Examiner, who wrote that the most dynamic of the musical performance is grainy-gowned Janis Joplin. She sings everything as a blues and bases her style on the Ma Rainey, Ida Cox tradition of the 1920s, with a bit of Bessie Smith thrown in. Miss Joplin warms the hearts of lifelong old blues fans like this reviewer. And the Big Brother band is in good shape these days, too. Their guitar-based blend has become a harmonic fascination, and the once ponderous rhythm is now moving in a rolling, good dancing pattern. Big Brother was in demand among San Francisco's up-and-coming rock photographers, including Herb Green, known for his distinctive portraits of the Grateful Dead and Jefferson Airplane. Noted photographer Jim Marshall developed a rapport with Janis as he shot the band on stage in the Panhandle. Former New Yorker Bob Seidman was particularly friendly with Big Brother and caught the group in their brand new rehearsal studio, The Warehouse, a cavernous space on the second floor of a three-story building on Golden Gate Avenue. As the band's confidants, Seidman later captured intimate portraits of Big Brother's two main draws, James Gurley and Janis. First he shot Gurley wearing an old West-style shirt, his long hair accentuated with a large feather. Janis loved the photo and sent a Big Brother handbill with the Gurley image to her parents, with a note explaining that James is quite a romantic figure in the hip scene in SF, which numbers from 5 to 10,000 people according to the SF Chronicle. And reports are that soon 3x5 posters of his face will be on sale around. Fantastic, eh? During Janis' session with Seidman, she had her own ideas about creating an iconic image. After he took a few photos, she began removing her clothes until she was wearing nothing more than a dozen bead necklaces and a sparkly black cape draped around her shoulders. Artfully shot in shadow, the provocative black and white portrait shows Janis, with a hint of one nipple exposed through the beads, staring boldly into the lens with a hungry look on her face. The photograph would become Janis' defining image, immortalizing her as the Queen of Hyde-Ashbury. Another shot, never published during her lifetime, was Janis, sans cape, her nakedness obscured only by beads, her hands crossed and covering her mons veneris. The portraits came to represent a woman to whom the whole country would soon be introduced, a woman unafraid to express naked emotion on stage and in her recordings. Janis found her first home in the Height when Julius Carpin rented her a really fine apartment on Lyon Street, composed of 2 large rooms, a kitchen, a bath, and a curved bay window and balcony overlooking the lush green Panhandle, a hippie hangout and the site of frequent free concerts. "I'm right across the street from the park," she wrote her parents. "Here you can go 10 to 20 blocks without ever seeing a living plant. And I just had to look out my window or step on the balcony, and I've got fresh air and trees and grass. So wonderful." A respiratory infection had motivated Janis to give up cigarettes, a habit she had acquired at 14, and she reported the news to the Joplins, demonstrating that she was taking care of herself as her career was taking off. "Guess what I've done? I've quit smoking. Still want one now and then, but it's been about a month now. I felt it was just too hard on my voice. I've been smoking for 10 years. I got a really bad cold and bronchitis, and I just couldn't smoke for about a week, and when I got well, I refused to start again. I may break down, but I hope not. This is really better for me." As articles about Haight-Ashbury and Big Brother proliferated, Janis sent her family a stream of clippings as well as band merchandise. She mailed her brother Mike a t-shirt emblazoned with the family dog logo, featuring its canine mascot, Sancho, on the front, and Big Brother and the holding company across the back. Janis's Bay Area fans had become more expressive in their affection, and she drank in the attention she always wanted. After the band played on April 15th, the massive spring mobilization for peace gathering at Golden Gate Park's Kaiser Stadium, she didn't write the Joplins about the speeches by Coretta Scott King, the wife of Martin Luther King Jr., and Julian Bond, a founding member of SNCC, then serving in Georgia's House of Representatives. Instead, she focused on her feelings of impending stardom. "A simply amazing thing happened," she explained. "As the boys were tuning, I walked up to the front of the stage to set up the microphones, and as I raised the middle mic up to my mouth, the whole audience applauded. Too much. And then, as we were getting ready to play, a girl yelled out, 'Janis Joplin lives!' Now, you can't argue with that, and they clapped again." Also, a rock publication named World Countdown had a collage on its cover using photographs of important personages in and about the scene, and I'm in there. The following week, Janis and Big Brother made their second television appearance. Previously, in November '66, they had lip-synced their mainstream debut single on POW, a local program, but this time they played live in the studio, broadcast on the April 25th episode of Come Up the Years, on future PBS affiliate KQED. The producers built a set resembling the Avalon Ballroom, with light show-style graphics behind the band. Looking comfortable and relaxed on camera, Big Brother played a typically egalitarian set, with Albin, Gurley, Andrew, and Janis each getting a featured spot, performing Down on Me, Light is Faster Than Sound, Cuckoo, and Blow My Mind. In the Hall of the Mountain King and Ball and Chain, Janis, dressed in a capelet, leather miniskirt, print blouse, beads, and boots, sat with the guys for an on-camera Q&A with the show's host. Between joking around, Janis earnestly described her boring life in Port Arthur, brief career as a folk singer, and admiration for San Francisco, where playing music is the mostest fun there is. The show signed off with Janis looking into the camera and quipping, "Hello, Mom." Though Dorothy couldn't view her daughter's bid for parental approval, since it only aired in San Francisco, Janis soon wrote to let her know that things are going good for us, and me personally, I can't quite believe it. I never ever thought things could be so wonderful. She reported that the band's playing was better than ever. Its constant gigging was reaping good reviews, and its finances had improved, with the band earning more than $1,000 for a weekend's work and $500 to $900 for one-off shows. "Not bad for a bunch of beatniks, eh?" Janis remarked, "and our reputation is still going uphill. It's funny to watch. You can tell where you are by the people that are on your side. You know, the scene followers, the people with a finger on the pulse of the public. Guess who was in town last week? Paul McCartney. And he came to see us. Honest to God, he came to the Matrix and saw us and told some people that he dug us. Isn't that exciting? God, I was so thrilled. I still am. Imagine Paul. If only it could have been George." Oh well, I didn't get to see him anyway. We heard about it afterwards. Why, if I had known that he was out there, I would have jumped right off the stage and made a fool of myself. McCartney, it turned out later, was not in the audience that night, but in attendance at Big Brother shows was another British Invasion star, Eric Burdon of the Animals, as well as Peter Tork and Mickey Delonez, of pop rock sensation The Monkees, all drawn by Janis's voice. New manager Julius Carpin, stoked about the group's potential, thought they were on a mission from God, helping lead the San Francisco Revolution as they generated near hysteria at gigs such as the Avalon's Tribal Stomp. My motto was to guide them, to let the band stay true to itself. With so many bookings, Big Brother hired its first employee, Dave Richards, an arpist, carpenter, and a cab driver who became their equipment manager and a close friend of Janis's. Carpin increased Big Brother's performance fees, budgeted its earnings, bought new equipment, and put the members on a weekly salary of $100 each, roughly $329 today, about which Janis gleefully wrote her parents. Good heavens! Most exciting of all was her newfound status as Hyde-Ashbury's first pin-up, which she began calling herself. "They're bringing out a poster of me," Janis crowed. "Maybe you've read in Time magazine about the personality posters. They're big, very big photographs. Jean Harlow, Einstein, Belmondo, Dylan, and Joplin. Yes, folks, it's me wearing a sequined cape, thousands of strings of beads, and topless. But it barely shows because of the beads. Very dramatic photograph, and I look really beautiful. If it wouldn't embarrass you, I'd send you one. I'm thrilled." Well, that completes part 1 of chapter 13. Let me know what you guys thought of part 1 in the comments. That does it for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. I really appreciate the support. I'll see you next time. Until then, rock on.